E-Rock with Level Up Squad here, and I'm with a special guest, Dr. Perry Braun. She has a master's in psychology, and she has a PhD in integrative medicine, and she's been doing holistic practice for 30 years now. And so we have her as a guest today. It's pretty interesting the way I found her. We'll go over all that, and she's gonna talk about what she does. She actually changed my life. I'm so grateful and so thankful that I met you, like 5 years ago? And what you did for me totally changed my life. I think that everybody should know about this and implement this in their life. So with no further ado, Miss Dr. Perry Braun.
Yes. Hi. So just briefly, I have been full-time private practice for about 10 years, but I have been in the alternative medicine field for 30, both as a minister, as a counselor, as an addiction counselor. A lot of my journey was about, I was able to get healed from an eating disorder using multiple modalities. And then I was married to a man who struggled with sex addiction. And so a lot of who I am today is through a lot of pain and suffering and trial and error and seeking out answers. And it's interesting that most practitioners in the alternative medicine field were once sick, and traditional or allopathic medicine did not bring them the results to healing. And so after you've really struggled or suffered through an area, you find that tends to give you a passion or a feeling of a calling or a sense in the field that you've experienced. And I knew in my early 20s that I was called to be a counselor. And so over these years of looking for answers, and a lot of it being in the church and not finding them in the church either, is I really sought out, I'm kind of a bulldog of there's got to be answers for anything. A 12% addiction recovery rate is not acceptable. We were not born broken, and we weren't designed broken. So we've got to have better answers. So over the years, that really just has led me to this journey of a holistic practice that addresses body, soul, spirit, nutritional, toxins, pretty much the whole gamut. And then about 2012, everywhere I looked, I was being re-exposed to the law of attraction, to quantum physics, to these principles of energy and energy medicine, and then put all this together to really understand how those apply to the body and to healing. And so that's really how I've put together my modality. I was exposed to the emotion code in 2012, and I got trained in that. And what I learned immediately was if we are a quantum supercomputer, meaning that your body has a memory of everything you've ever eaten, everything you've ever said, everything that's been said to you is stored in this quantum supercomputer in your subconscious. And we can access that information using muscle response testing, which are yes and no statements. Then we can ask the body not just anything, but everything. So we use it to find the roots of all disease, the roots of addiction, the roots of trauma, trapped emotions. And essentially the law of attraction says, I will attract in my life what I believe to be true. So we reprogram beliefs, we find out the roots of those. We deal with nutritional deficiencies and how to heal the body. At this point, in my belief, America is the most toxic country in the world.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's for sure.
And then when they kicked on 5G, that just put us to a whole different level of
we're getting hit from every direction.
Frequencies.
We've had videos before talking about the water, talking about pollution, talking about the toxins in your own home.
Yeah.
But I believe that mental health is the most important health that people need to start with.
Yes.
Up here.
Yes, and with that, an agreement is if you understand that we think about 60,000 thoughts a day, and about 95% of those are subconscious. And so if they're positive beliefs, they raise our vibration, they create a positive effect. If they're negative beliefs, they literally create a toxic effect in the body.
And these thoughts can even make you sick, right?
And they can make you sick, absolutely. And we're not aware of what a lot of these are, so absolutely, if we eat 5 times a day and we think 60,000, which of those do you think we should be putting more attention and focus on? And I love nutritionists, I love chiropractors, I love all these people, but they're not focusing on the energy. And one of the things I do when I train people and when I demonstrate to people is the power of their thoughts and intentions. And we talk about Dr. Masaru Emoto and the intention that holds in water. The whole energy medicine field is exploding with understanding the power of frequency. And the body is made up of 70% water. So the imprinting of frequency in the water, good and bad.
I've healed myself with frequency, and that's getting to how I even met you.
Yes.
So when I was sick with Lyme's disease back in 2018, no doctor could diagnose me. They said, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly healthy. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I got bit by an insect and I feel like this. And it was like 2 months of going to, I think, 6 or 7 different doctors till finally they discovered the bacteria from Lyme's disease. By that time, it was too late. But during that process, I was like, well, if they're saying I'm healthy, maybe it's something else. And, I grew up kind of in a religious upbringing. So I was like, well, maybe somebody put some juju or some bad luck on me or something, right? So when I was going down the rabbit holes doing the research, that's when I found this book by Dr. Bradley Nelson. And the emotion code, how to release trapped emotions for abundance, health, love, and happiness. And I was like, well, that sounds kind of interesting. But then when I started to learn about how you could release trauma and emotions by working with a licensed therapist, I was like, that sounds pretty interesting. And so when I started to dig deep into this, and I was like, a lot of people say, oh, I don't have anything wrong with me, or that really didn't affect me, even though that happened in my life. I'm over it.
Right.
But are you really over it?
Yeah.
And how much can that really impact your life? Like, can it impact your health? Can it impact your love life, your regular life, right?
Absolutely. What I like to say is that we are all this bowl full of balls of negative balls of energy. So an emotion, negative emotion would be like a vibrating ball of energy. And most people's bowls are full. And at a certain point, your bowl, as it starts to tip over, is going to manifest in disease or some kind of mental illness or addiction or obsessive compulsive disorder or something. And so we think that we can just stuff emotions and they go away because we're not consciously thinking about them. But they're still in our body somewhere vibrating at a low frequency and affecting us negatively. So we really don't get over stuff by just putting it away. It really doesn't work.
So you were able to find out things that happened to me in my youth, which I was really shocked because I had a pretty good upbringing, but some things happen that we forget.
Yes.
But I did your therapy along with ozone therapy and the Rife machine. And, I have another video talking about how I got rid of Lyme's disease myself with these 3 things. And it's pretty amazing. If people saw me back in 2018, I couldn't barely walk. I couldn't work. I couldn't even turn my body because I was so stiff.
Wow.
And look at me now. Once I released some of these things that were holding back, some people call it emotional baggage. Mm-hmm. Once you release these things, you open up other opportunities in your life. You open opportunities for relationship success.
Yes.
I was able to get a new career, a new house, a new car. And I was like, wow, I look back, just a few years ago, I was flat broke.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you how your life can turn around once you open up, let go of the toxic stuff, let go of the bad stuff and the bad emotions, and open yourself up to new opportunity.
And really, that is what the law of attraction says. It says like attracts like. And we are all this combination of measurable vibrations. It's a fact. We're made up of atoms. And so things like sickness, anger, fear, all those traumas, they vibrate at a low frequency, so they're going to attract more low frequency things. When we can raise that vibration and be at a higher place of peace and joy, we're more likely to attract good things.
Some people even call that the fruits of the spirit, don't they?
They do.
Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faith.
That's right. Absolutely.
And that's where the true happiness is, right? That's where the true living a life in excellence is.
Yes. Yes. Fruit is different than gifts, right? Mm-hmm. You really can't put a price on peace and joy. There's really no price tag to put on it. But we have to get rid of a lot of trapped fear and worry and all these things to truly experience peace.
So what do you say to people? Because, there's people out there, I don't need this. Yeah, that happened to me when I was young, but I'm over it. What would you say to somebody like that, that's still holding on to those things?
Well, I think that most people come to some kind of crisis in their life where they suddenly realize they need help. Okay. If your life is fine and you think you're fine, there's two things I say. One is, how is it really working for you? Are you really being honest with yourself? Do you see people whose lives are more abundant in joy and you wish you had their life and you'd like to get there? So you've got the people who seem to be okay, but they're just kind of status quo. And at some point, if they were really honest, they're kind of like, is this all there is? And then you have other people who have gotten sick or having some kind of presenting problem that's putting them in a state of despair or pain. And that kind of state is really the biggest motivation to change. If, for me, I had chronic fatigue in my early 20s. This chiropractor randomly muscle tested me to find out I had mercury toxicity from a lot of fillings. And I was young, I was 24. And so I got all my fillings released. And when I had this eating disorder prior to that and had started going to counseling, it felt so great to have somebody to talk to about all of my emotions. I grew up in Massachusetts, and I say it's one of the meanest states in the country. People are mean.
Really?
And you're not allowed to feel. And
Wow.
So I had a lot of feelings. And so between going, I love therapy, and then going, wow, like I got mercury out of my body and now I don't have chronic fatigue. All these things just happened to me. I kind of say I really stumbled into, I say God did not audibly speak to me and go, do this, do that. I really just stumbled into everything that I do. But I know it was very divinely led. But it was just those things that were right in front of me that I couldn't skirt, that I went, oh, and that really is how I got here today, is it was so supernaturally led, step by step by step by step. And so it was a pretty cool, amazing life that I've had, where truly since I was about 21, everything has been directed to what I do today.
That's amazing. And we're human beings, so we live off emotion, right?
Yeah.
Emotion is a human thing, whether it be good or bad emotion. But not every emotion is bad, right? It's just the way you actually process it.
Right. Well, God gave us all the emotions. They are part of our emotional being. I wouldn't call an emotion bad. I would call it painful or joyful. But if we didn't feel painful emotions, we wouldn't understand the power of joyful emotions, right? We were designed to be able to process negative emotions. It's just that nobody teaches us how to do that. So if you teach a 5-year-old how to cry and process through and be comforted, their brain actually develops what we call joy strength. And their brain develops neural pathways with the ability to go from a state of despair back to a state of peace and joy. We can't live a life free of difficulty or pain. It's not possible. And so what we're supposed to do as parents is teach our children how to feel, where we can help them process their feelings. And then when they become adults, they have the ability to do it with that because their brains have been developed to do it. And that is one of the deficits in our culture, is
So you
we're
see a
very
gap in that
robotic.
with a lot of families.
Very much. We call it a no talk, no feel home. It's basically a foundational issue in every addiction.
And even a lot of men are told, oh, you're not supposed to have feelings. You're supposed to be a tough guy.
Yes.
In fact, some men actually believe that if you show any kind of emotion, weak emotion, that women won't even be attracted to you anymore. And it happens sometimes.
Well, some women, but I think, I think one of the hardest persons to be in this society is a sensitive male, because a healthy person feels, processes, and releases their emotions. But when you have a stigma that says that's not healthy to do, and you are sensitive, then what do you do with that? You really have no other choice but to try to figure out a way to shut it down. If you're not very emotional by design, then obviously it's much easier. But I believe we were designed to live from our hearts. Our hearts actually have a thousands of times stronger energetic field and magnetic field and electrical field than our brains do. And so I think that if people could feel their feelings, process and release them, then they are more likely to be open-hearted and not have walls up, because they know how to get over stuff. If I don't know how to get over betrayal, I'm not going to let myself feel love.
And you've heard people saying, like, especially women that had a bad relationship, oh, all guys are, you know, a-holes, or all guys are this. When you hear somebody say that, what does that tell you?
Well, that they've kept attracting the same thing over and over, and they're attracting what they believe, but it's not universally true. I laugh because you're one of my clients where I'll go, Just when I'm stereotyping a guy, I'll get a guy who has the same experience as a woman with women that women have had with men. And I go, it really has nothing to do with gender, right? I'll say, God just always brings me a male client to remind me this is not a gender issue. It's a human issue. And so imagine if we lived in a world where people actually truly were connected to their hearts and they lived from their hearts. But because we're wired to survive, if feeling is not safe, because people aren't safe, or we never learned how to process it. So an example would be if I fell in love and I got my heart broken and it took me 5 years to get over it, I'm less likely to take the risk to fall in love again.
That's
right?
why a lot of people end up staying single, right?
Or
having another better
or
relationship.
shut down in just relationships. If I knew how to process betrayal and rejection and grieve the loss and get over it, then I would be more likely to love again because it wouldn't cost me so much. It wouldn't be as big a risk. I wouldn't be as scared. And that was how we were designed. We are designed to process emotion.
So you're saying the average person can actually learn how to be aware of their conscious thoughts and how to address and process their emotion?
Right. And what we do with muscle testing is it's not traditional therapy because we are actually asking the body to tell us what it wants to release. And the client doesn't have to feel the feeling. We are energetically pulling that trapped emotion out of the body or that trauma. So imagine if I have this bowl full and I'm pulling them out, right? Well, after a while, I just naturally start to feel again because I've been shut down. And our end goal is to reconnect your head with your heart, because I don't want you dependent on me to come every time you have a bad feeling to energetically release it. The end goal is going, oh, I actually am not shut down and numb and disconnected. I can actually feel my feelings now, process them and release them. And then you don't ever get trapped emotions anymore.
And somebody has to be aware of that, right? They have to be conscious of the unconscious.
Yes, but after you start to release enough of this stuff, you kind of automatically start feeling again. We use 2/3 of the world's pharmaceuticals. So people get depressed, they take a drug, right? Or recreational drugs because they don't want to feel. But if you started if you started taking the numbness away and you actually started feeling a little bit and you were processing and are releasing it, people get to a point where they have no idea how they're feeling and they have no idea how to release it because that wall is so thick. If we're whittling that wall away, and people want to feel, they're just scared to feel. We're made for humans. We're made to feel. We're not robots. And it's a beautiful, wonderful thing to feel joy and negative feelings. Negative feelings are hard, but it feels amazing when you've processed it. And you feel such a mastery and a victory, like, oh, that did not destroy me or master me. I was able to move on. It's a very powerful feeling. That is my end goal with people, is to just reconnect to their hearts, because our heart is so freaking powerful, and we
Doesn't
don't
that even
live from
project
it.
the energy field?
Yes, the energy field goes out really far. And so I can say I love, but if I've got this wall that's holding all that in, people aren't feeling that, right? And our world's pretty screwed up. And I think a lot of it is because we're so shut down emotionally.
Look at the kind of things that happens when people hold on to these trapped emotions. I have a thought to believe, and I'm curious to see what you think. Like even some of these things that happen, like shootings in public or anything like that, are these calls from people that have trapped emotions, or people that are abusive to other people, or people that are doing crazy bad things to other people, harming other people? Do you feel it's because they have unprocessed emotions?
Well, I think everybody has unprocessed emotions. I have some different beliefs about a lot of that. Some of it could be chemical imbalance, which is caused by a lot of things. Some of it could be what we would call trauma-based mind control, where they have been so traumatized they dissociate, and so they're more easily programmed by whatever to want to do that. I know that a lot of the shootings happened as a result right before or after a change in an SSRI or a chemical, like I believe Columbine, both of those boys were on antidepressants. There may have been some demonic stuff too, but a lot of these things on a case-by-case basis, I could kind of go and break apart and go, this irrational thing that happened can be explained in a spiritual, mental, emotional, or physical cause, or some combination of those three things. None of it's random, but there's usually an explanation.
Mm-hmm. So if someone decides that they want to be aware of their conscious feelings and they want to pursue this, what are some of the examples of turnarounds you've seen in your life? Some amazing experiences that people have totally changed their life, and now they're a different person.
I was thinking about this older woman. She was in her mid-60s and her husband had died 2 years earlier. She had been on 5 antidepressants for 15 years. When I started working with her, she'd never been to therapy. She had never really felt her feelings. So I helped her. She wanted to come off of her drugs because they weren't working. And so I helped her substitute supplements for the drugs to help her brain chemistry and her depression. And we just pulled trapped emotions and traumas off. And after a couple months, she calls me one day and she says, I don't know what's wrong with me. She goes, I'm so angry. I just want to bite everyone's head off.
Wow.
And I went, yay. Because she just had never felt her feelings her whole life. Her life had never allowed her the safety to feel. She had so much anger built up in her. And we were getting her healthy. Her liver was detoxing all of the drugs. Your liver stores anger.
Oh, really? Out of all the organs, that's the one?
Yeah. And so by detoxing the liver and getting trauma off, she was starting to feel. And the predominant feeling wasn't grief, it was anger. But anger can be a masking emotion for a lot of feelings too.
Wow. But
the point was she was starting to feel, and she had never really let herself feel her whole life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, if somebody wants to level up their life and, open up opportunities for success, love, career, I strongly suggest that somebody get into this type of holistic healing. So what would somebody expect? Because when I first got into it, I was a little skeptical. I was like, how are they doing this? Is this like psychic, or is this like, magic?
Right.
How would you actually explain this process to someone that wants to?
Well, so muscle response testing has been around about 70 years. They have done hundreds of thousands of independent scientific studies to validate its efficacy. And essentially the way it works is it works in the same technology as a lie detector test, okay? So when you do a lie detector test, they hook you up to an EEG machine, and we're made up of frequency or vibration. We're a series of electrical impulses in our body and energetic impulses. And when we make a statement that's true, our body gives off a certain frequency. And when we make a statement that's not true, our frequency changes. And so as a result, the magnetic response on the paper shows up differently, and that's how they get a baseline of a true or not true statement.
Interesting.
Well, the same holds true for a muscle response, whether it's a strength or a weakness in the muscle response. And so we can do the same thing by muscle testing the body and getting a strong or weak response for a yes or no. And we're asking the subconscious questions, not the conscious mind. And so the response is based on the subconscious response to that statement being true or not true. So I basically have this massive toolbox of thousands and thousands of possibilities. And we're asking the body by making yes or no statements to tell us what it wants to release today. That's the best way to understand it.
And this is something you can do in person or from a distance, correct?
Yes. So one of the principles in quantum physics is called the law of entanglement or non-locality. And what that means is that energy is not bound in one place, and it's not connected by proximity, right? So people can say, oh, I feel a connection with my twin on the other side of the world, right? Well, you genuinely are electromagnetically connected to that person, okay? And they did all these experiments, which I won't go into, but you can Google them. We are electromagnetically connected to everything. We call it the field. And so the best way I explain it to a person who I'm Zooming on the other side of the world is your quantum supercomputer is networked to mine through the internet. And so I can muscle test myself with a remote testing, a weak or strong response, and tap into your supercomputer and get the same responses as if you were sitting across from me and I was testing your
Wow,
body.
that's next level stuff right there.
Yeah, but you'd be amazed. There's thousands of practitioners all over the world who
And you
do
train
this.
practitioners
I
as well,
do.
right?
As a matter of fact, I'm in a training this week. I left early to come to this
Thank you.
interview this week. And so I've trained over 100 practitioners to use my modality. It is certified. And what I've done is combine this idea that we can ask the body to tell us anything.
And that
Even in
includes-
your generational line,
Oh, really?
your DNA has a record of everything your ancestors handed down to you. And so we can
So you're
find,
saying even like an emotion can be
yes,
transferred over to your lineage?
yes.
Wow.
So they did a study, Emory did a study, I think it's only been just over 10 years ago, I believe. And they took rats and they put them in mice, and they put cherry blossoms in the cage, and then they shocked the mice. And then they took they took the shock away, but every time they put the cherry blossoms in, the mice would still freak out because they would expect to get shocked.
Oh, wow. Like a response.
So then they bred the mice, and then they had the next generation of mice. And then when they put the cherry blossoms in the cage, the next generation of mice freaked out. So the memory
Wow.
of connecting the smell to pain was handed down in the DNA.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
So trauma can be handed down, emotions, beliefs, predisposition to illness. We call it miasms.
So it's
can
almost
be
like
handed down.
Programming within your DNA.
Yes, and it gets handed down. It doesn't always get activated with everybody. Why did this person have diabetes and this one not? From
So it
the
could be health
generational
related
line.
too.
Absolutely. So emotions, health, lots of things. But I can test for all of that and find that, and then we can clear it so that you are thriving, which is my most recent book, is How Do We Thrive? We thrive by getting rid of all the low frequency stuff from our body and adding in high frequency stuff, and that's body, soul, and spirit. About a third of the book is what to do, practical application.
Well, I'm
So
all about
how
that.
to do it. Yeah.
So how could somebody access this information or your books or even possibly have some therapy with you?
Okay, so my website is integratedlifestrategies.com. There's lots of information on there. You can buy all my books on there. The book Thrive is also on Audible, and they're on Kindle. This one's not on Kindle because it's a journal. And there is a page on the plans that I offer, and you can do a free consultation with me just to see what's right for you. I also have a referral network for other practitioners around the network. Let's say you prefer to see a male, or if you're just in a lower income and you can't afford what I charge, then I can refer you to somebody who's a little more affordable. So, but in 10 years, I have thousands and thousands of stories of people's lives being changed.
Even me.
Yeah, and
I'm so grateful.
I really don't take credit for it. It really is the toolbox. I can teach anybody to use this toolbox. My training is 5 days. I love training. I would prefer to
You train someone how to heal people or
do
heal
this.
themselves?
Both. And so a lot of times if I have somebody come in and I know they have a lot of stuff, I'll go, listen, if you do the training, you can learn how to sit down and work on yourself, your friends, your family, even if you don't want to go into private practice. It's worth the cost of the training just to have the tool because it'll be faster and you won't spend as much money paying.
Yeah, because I know I've had dozens of sessions with you.
Yeah. And then also you become a part of a network of practitioners where you can barter and trade out with other people. So I really do promote the training. It's also recorded so you can rewatch it and rewatch it. But the toolbox is something I can teach anybody to use. You don't have to have a PhD or 30 years of experience.
Like you.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that resonates with most people. And if you're ready to level up your life and to open up abundance in your life, this is something that I recommend to anybody. It's changed my life after dozens and dozens of sessions. I don't feel like I have any baggage whatsoever. I'm aware of my emotion. I process the emotion and I move on with my day. And I'm able to manifest the things I want. It's just so amazing. It's like, what? I just thought about that and now it's actually happening and it's coming to you. So the law of attraction is so amazing.
It really is.
But I just wanted to thank you again for coming on to the podcast today. And, if anybody has any questions or want to reach out to Dr. Robin Perry Braun, you can go to her website.
Yep, there's a contact page on there. So
All right.
thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.